What is the true measure of a man? Is it the balance in his bank account or the size of his home? Or is it found in the quiet moments that no one is meant to see? This is the story of Liam Bennett, a single father whose world had shrunk to the size of his daughter's smile, and Amelia Davenport, a CEO whose empire spanned the globe but couldn't fill the space in her heart. It began on the cold stone steps of a museum with a simple shared sandwich, a quiet transaction of kindness between a struggling father and a lonely little girl. But they weren't alone. Watching from the shadows was the girl's mother, an unseen architect of empires, her mind trained to see threats, not tenderness. What happens when a simple act of compassion, intended for no audience, is witnessed by the one person who could change everything? This is a story about how half a sandwich can be worth more than a fortune. The New York City air in late September carried a crisp promise of autumn, a welcome relief from the sweltering humidity of August. For Liam Bennett, it was just another Tuesday, a day carved into rigid blocks of freelance graphic design work, school runs, and the constant, humming anxiety of bills yet to be paid. His office was a corner of his cramped two-bedroom apartment in Queens, a space he shared with the undisputed CEO of his life, his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was a whirlwind of missing teeth, mismatched socks, and a laugh that could, on most days, convince Liam that everything was going to be okay. Today they were on their weekly art adventure. It was a grand name for a simple tradition. They would take the subway to Manhattan, sit on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and he would let her sketch the pigeons and the river of people flowing by while they shared lunch. They couldn't afford the museum entrance fee every week, but the steps were free and the inspiration was priceless. Liam's own lunch was a testament to his financial state. 2 slices of wheat bread, a single slice of turkey, a leaf of lettuce, and a thin smear of mayonnaise. He had already given Lily her half, packed neatly in a container with an apple and a juice box. His half was wrapped in wax paper. It wasn't much, but after a morning spent chasing down a client for an overdue invoice, it felt like a feast. As Lily sketched furiously in her notepad, her tongue sticking out in concentration, Liam scanned the crowd. Tourists posed for photos, students sprawled with textbooks, and businessmen barked into phones. And then he saw her, a little girl, no older than Lily, sitting alone on a lower step. She was impeccably dressed in a navy blue pea coat, her dark hair tied back with a velvet ribbon. But her perfect clothes were a stark contrast to her state. Her shoulders were slumped and she was crying. Not loud, wailing cries, but the silent, heartbreaking kind, where tears traced clean paths down her dusty cheeks. There were no parents in sight. Liam waited a minute, then 2, expecting a frantic mother or father to rush to her side. No one came. His fatherly instinct, a muscle that had been working overtime for the last 4 years since his wife Sarah passed away, screamed at him. "Hey, Lils," he said softly, touching his daughter's shoulder. "See that little girl down there? She looks a bit sad, doesn't she?" Lily looked up, her brown eyes wide with concern. "Why is she crying, Daddy?" "I don't know, sweetheart, but I don't think anyone should have to be sad all by themselves. What do you think?" Lily nodded solemnly. Liam stood up, his joints protesting slightly. He walked down the steps and crouched in front of the girl. "Hey there," he said gently. "My name's Liam. Are you okay?" The girl flinched, pulling her knees tighter to her chest. She shook her head, a tear dropping onto her polished leather shoe. "Did you get lost? Are you waiting for your mommy or daddy?" She nodded this time, whispering, "Mommy, she's in a meeting. She told me to wait." Her voice was small and fragile. "A meeting? In the museum?" Liam frowned. That seemed odd. "Across the street," the girl mumbled, pointing a small finger towards a monolithic glass building. "She said she could see me from the window, but she's been gone a long time." The last few words wobbled and a fresh wave of tears followed. Liam's heart ached. He looked up at the reflective windows of the skyscraper. It was impossible to see anything. He couldn't just leave her. He sat down on the step beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Well, sometimes meetings can be very boring and go on forever," he said with a conspiratorial wink. "My daughter Lily and I were just about to have our lunch. It's not much, but my turkey sandwiches are kind of famous. At least that's what Lily tells me. He glanced back at Lily, who gave him an encouraging thumbs up. The little girl looked at him, her tear-filled blue eyes assessing him with a seriousness that seemed too old for her years. He unwrapped his sandwich half. The bread was a little squashed, but it was food. His stomach rumbled in protest, but he ignored it. "I'm not supposed to take food from strangers," she said, her voice raspy from crying. "That's a very smart rule," Liam agreed. "But we're not really strangers anymore, are we? I'm Liam. That's my daughter Lily. What's your name?" She hesitated. "Chloe." "Well, Chloe, it's very nice to meet you, and this is just a sandwich. No weirdo would go to the trouble of putting poison in half a turkey sandwich. It's not very cost-effective." He tried for a joke, and to his immense relief, a tiny smile ghosted across her lips. He broke his half sandwich into two smaller pieces. "Here," he said, holding out the larger piece. "No strings attached. Just look like you could use a friend right now." Chloe looked from the sandwich to his face and then back again. Slowly, she reached out and took it. She took a small, hesitant bite. "It's good," she whispered. They sat there in silence for a few minutes, the two of them and Lily a few steps above, a strange, temporary family, sharing a meager lunch against the grandeur of the city. Unseen, untouched by the common flow of humanity on the sidewalk, a black Cadillac Escalade was parked 50 yards away, its tinted windows rendering it anonymous. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of expensive leather and bottled water. In the back seat sat Amelia Davenport, CEO of Oratech, one of the fastest-growing technology firms in the world. Her fingers, adorned with a single elegant diamond ring, were paused over the screen of her tablet. She wasn't looking at the quarterly projections anymore. Her gaze was fixed, laser-sharp, on the museum steps. On her daughter, Chloe. She had seen the man approach. Her first instinct was a surge of ice-cold adrenaline. Her hand had immediately gone to her phone, ready to dial Marcus, her head of security, who was waiting discreetly nearby. She had watched every move, her mind cataloging threats, assessing risks. A scruffy-looking man in a worn jacket and faded jeans. He was a variable she hadn't accounted for. The meeting had run over, a brutal negotiation with a Japanese conglomerate. She had told Chloe to wait, that she would be right there, that she could see her from the 34th floor window. It was a lie, of course. The window was reflective glass, and she was in a conference room on the other side of the building. A necessary lie, she had told herself, to keep Chloe from feeling abandoned. Now the bitter irony of that lie was burning in her gut. She watched as the man sat down, as he spoke to her daughter. Her muscles were tensed, ready to fling open the door and storm over there. Who was he? What did he want? But then she saw his own daughter, the little girl with the sketchbook, watching them with such open, honest concern. She saw him offer the sandwich. Her Chloe, who was taught never to speak to strangers, never to accept anything, hesitated. Amelia held her breath, and then she saw Chloe take the food. She saw her take a bite. Amelia's mind, a machine of logic and strategy, faltered. This wasn't a threat. This was kindness. A kindness so simple and uncalculated it felt alien. This man, who looked like he counted every penny, had just given half of his meager lunch to her daughter without a second thought. He didn't know she was Chloe Davenport, heiress to a fortune. He just saw a sad little girl. A complex storm of emotions swirled within her. Fierce, protective anger at herself for leaving Chloe alone. A sharp pang of guilt that a stranger was comforting her child when she wasn't. And a confusing, unwelcome flicker of gratitude towards the man in the worn jacket. He was doing her job. She finally picked up her phone, but she didn't call Marcus to intervene. She pressed the camera icon, zoomed in as far as she could, and took a picture. A slightly blurry photo of a man and two little girls, sharing a sandwich on the steps of the Met. "Marcus," she said into the phone a moment later, her voice all business, cold and precise. "The man in the gray jacket talking to Chloe. I have a picture. I want to know who he is. I want to know everything." Amelia Davenport did not believe in coincidences. She believed in data, patterns, and leverage. Kindness, especially from a stranger, was simply a variable she hadn't yet quantified. As her Escalade pulled away from the curb, after she had swept in with a flurry of apologies and a strained smile, Pulling Chloe into a hug that felt more like a reclamation, her mind was already processing. She had thanked the man, Liam, with a curt, formal nod. "Thank you for keeping her company," she'd said, her voice clipped. She hadn't offered him money. It felt too crass, and something in his clear, steady gaze told her it would be rejected. Instead, she had handed him a crisp Oratech business card. "For your trouble." It was a dismissal, a transaction, a way to close the uncomfortable loop of indebtedness she felt. He had simply glanced at it, tucked it into his pocket without comment, and said, "She's a great kid. Have a good day." Then he had turned back to his own daughter, and for them, the moment was over. For Amelia, it was just beginning. Back in her penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, a palace of glass and minimalist white furniture, Chloe was quiet. The shared sandwich seemed to have filled a space that Amelia's expensive, chef-prepared meals rarely could. "The man was nice, Mommy," Chloe said, as her nanny Maria got her ready for bed. "He said his sandwiches were famous." "Did he now?" Amelia replied, her attention only half on her daughter. Her focus was on the email that had just arrived from Marcus Thorne, her head of security. The subject line was succinct. Subject, Bennett Liam. Marcus was a former Mossad agent, a man for whom the word thorough was an understatement. He could find a ghost if you gave him a name. The file he had compiled in under 3 hours was a stark, black and white portrait of a life. Name, Liam Bennett. Age, 38. Address, a rental in Astoria, Queens. Occupation, freelance graphic designer. Formerly senior designer at Sterling Cooper and Price, a major advertising agency. Laid off during corporate restructuring 18 months ago. Current income, sporadic. Financial records show a man living on the edge, meticulously paying his rent and bills, but with little to no savings. He was one emergency away from disaster. Marital status, widower. The report included a name that felt like an intrusion. Sarah Bennett, née Connolly. Died 4 years ago. Ovarian cancer. The report included a link to her obituary, a short, loving tribute that mentioned her devoted husband Liam and their beautiful daughter Lily. Dependents, Lily Bennett, age 7. Enrolled at PS 122 Mamie Fay. Excellent attendance. Good grades. Criminal record, none. Not even a parking ticket. Social media presence, a sparsely used Instagram account. It was a visual diary of a single father. Photos of Lily losing her first tooth, of Lily on a swing set pushed so high her feet touched the sky, of crayon drawings taped to a refrigerator. There were older pictures too, a smiling, vibrant woman with warm eyes. Sarah. The last picture of her was from a hospital bed. Liam's arm around her, both of them smiling, but a deep weariness was etched into his features. The caption simply read, "My everything, always." Amelia leaned back in her leather chair, the city lights twinkling below like a fallen galaxy. This wasn't the profile of a predator or a grifter. This was the profile of a man who had been dealt a bad hand and was playing it with a quiet, stubborn dignity. The man on the steps hadn't been looking for an opportunity. He had been living his life, a life that, in its own way, mirrored her own. Her husband, Richard, had been the brilliant mind behind Oratech's core algorithm. He had been the dreamer, she the pragmatist who built the empire around his dream. His death in a sudden, senseless car accident 2 years ago had not just made her a widow and Chloe half-orphaned, it had made her the sole guardian of his legacy. Grief was a luxury she couldn't afford. She had channeled it into work, building Oratech into a global behemoth, because if she stopped, if she truly paused to feel the cavernous void he had left, she feared she would collapse. She looked at the photo of Liam and Sarah. It was a candid shot filled with a warmth that felt a million miles away from her own life. Richard had been brilliant and driven, but their life had been a whirlwind of board meetings, international travel, and fundraising galas. The simple domestic joy in that photo felt like a language she had forgotten how to speak. The business card she had given him, Oratech. He would know who she was. Did he see her as an opportunity now? A wealthy single mother? The thought was cynical, a product of her world where every interaction was a negotiation, every relationship a potential asset or liability. But the data didn't support the cynicism. The man in the report seemed genuine. Guilt pricked at her again, sharper this time. While she was closing a nine-figure deal, a struggling designer from Queens was teaching her daughter a lesson in simple humanity. He had given Chloe his food, his time, his attention. What had she given Chloe that day? A hurried goodbye and a command to wait. "Maria," Amelia called out, her voice echoing in the vast, silent apartment. The kindly, middle-aged nanny appeared at the doorway. "Yes, Miss Davenport." "Chloe, was she very upset today, before I arrived?" Maria's expression softened with sympathy. "She was, ma'am. She misses her father. Today is the anniversary." Amelia's blood ran cold. Of course. October 25th. How could she have forgotten? In the maelstrom of the Japanese deal, the date, a day seared into her soul, had been buried under layers of contractual obligations and market analysis. She had forgotten the anniversary of her own husband's death, and her daughter had sat on the cold stone steps and cried for him, alone, until a man named Liam Bennett came along. Amelia closed the file on her screen. The data was clear. Liam Bennett was not a threat. He was not a variable to be managed. He was a good man. And for reasons she couldn't quite articulate, that fact was more unsettling than any corporate espionage she had ever faced. It challenged the very framework of the world she had built around herself. She stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city. He was out there, in a small apartment in Queens, probably reading his daughter a bedtime story. And in that moment, Amelia Davenport, the titan of industry, felt an acute, undeniable poverty of the soul. 2 weeks passed. Life for Liam returned to its familiar rhythm of deadlines and dad duties. The encounter on the museum steps faded into a pleasant, if strange, memory. He had looked up Oratech after the woman, Amelia Davenport, had left. He'd seen the Forbes articles, the magazine covers. The woman who had taken his business card with an air of dismissive authority was a near billionaire. It was so far removed from his reality that it felt like a scene from a movie. He'd chuckled, imagining what she'd thought of his squash turkey sandwich. He tucked the memory away and focused on the more pressing issue of landing a new client. His big chance was a project for the New York Children's Literacy Fund, a citywide charity initiative. They needed a new logo and branding package. The pay was modest, but the exposure would be incredible. It was the kind of work he was passionate about, the kind of work he and Sarah used to dream of him doing. He poured his heart into the proposal, working late into the night, fueled by cheap coffee and the hope that this could be a turning point. Saturday arrived, bringing with it a torrential downpour that washed the city clean. It was a perfect day for their other favorite tradition, a trip to the Strand bookstore. Lily needed a new book for a school project, and Liam loved the smell of old paper and the quiet reverence of the place. They were in the children's section on the second floor. Lily was debating the merits of a book about a magical treehouse versus one about a girl detective. Liam was half listening, his eyes scanning the shelves, when he heard a small, familiar voice. "Lily?" Both he and Lily turned. Standing at the end of the aisle, holding a book about constellations, was Chloe. Her eyes lit up in recognition. "The sandwich girl," Lily squealed with the unfiltered honesty of a 7-year-old. Chloe giggled. "Your dad's sandwiches are famous." Before Liam could properly react, another figure appeared behind Chloe. It was Amelia Davenport. Today she was dressed down, if one could call dark, tailored jeans, a cashmere sweater, and what looked like brand new leather boots, dressed down. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and without the armor of her business suit, she looked younger, less intimidating, and profoundly tired. "Chloe, don't wander off," she began, then her eyes met Liam's. A flicker of something unreadable passed through her expression. Surprise, recognition, and perhaps a hint of apprehension. "Oh, it's you." "Liam Bennett," he said, extending a hand out of habit. "We met on the steps." She took his hand. Her grip was firm, her skin soft. "Amelia Davenport, of course. I apologize again for my daughter, and for my tardiness that day." "Not at all," Liam said quickly. "The girls seem to have found each other." The two girls were already huddled together, Chloe showing Lily the pictures in her spacebook. An awkward silence descended upon the two adults. It was a strange collision of worlds, here in the aisle dedicated to fairy tales. I hope you didn't think I was... I just saw she was upset, Liam stammered, feeling suddenly self-conscious under her intense gaze. You were being kind, Amelia said, and the words sounded strange on her lips, as if she were testing their weight. It was appreciated, more than you know. She looked at her daughter, a softness in her eyes that he hadn't seen before. It turns out I had forgotten a rather important anniversary. Chloe was having a difficult day. Liam understood immediately. He knew the geography of those difficult days all too well. I'm sorry for your loss, he said, the words genuine and heartfelt. Amelia's polished facade seemed to crack for just a fraction of a second. She gave him a small, grateful nod. You too. Your wife? She asked, her voice quiet. He was taken aback. How did you... Your Instagram, she admitted, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. My security chief is... thorough. I apologize if that was an invasion of privacy. I had to be sure. Sure that I wasn't a sandwich-wielding maniac? He joked, and was relieved when she let out a small, genuine laugh. Something like that, she conceded. The tension broke. Look, she said, shifting gears back to a more comfortable, transactional mode. I never properly thanked you. Please let me buy the girls' books. Let me at least buy you lunch. A proper one this time. It was a test, he realized. An attempt to balance the scales, to turn his act of kindness into a debt that could be repaid and forgotten, and every fiber of his being resisted it. That's very generous, Ms. Davenport, he said politely, but it's not necessary. I didn't give Chloe half my sandwich because I wanted something in return. I did it because she was a sad kid and I'm a dad. That's all. His gentle refusal seemed to disarm her more than an argument would have. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and he saw not a CEO, but a woman grappling with something she couldn't control. Amelia, she said, please, call me Amelia. Liam, he replied with a smile. They ended up buying their own books and saying their goodbyes. But as Liam and Lily left the bookstore, splashing through puddles on their way to the subway, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The brief, unexpected meeting had felt more significant than it should have. He had pushed back against her world of transactions and, in doing so, had seemingly earned a sliver of her respect. He had no idea that their worlds were about to collide in a way that neither of them could ever have predicted. Back in her car, Amelia was on the phone with the director of the New York Children's Literacy Fund, a charity on which she sat as the primary benefactor and board chair. Eleanor, darling, Amelia said, her voice crisp and efficient once more. About the new branding campaign, have you and the committee reviewed the final submissions for the design contract? We have, Eleanor's voice crackled through the speaker. There are a few strong contenders from the big agencies, but honestly, Amelia, there's one from a freelancer that just blew us away. It has so much heart. It's exactly the feel we've been looking for. Really? Amelia said, intrigued. Who is the designer? His name is... Let me see. Eleanor rustled some papers. Ah, here it is. A Mr. Liam Bennett. Amelia's hand tightened on her phone. The world, which had felt so vast and compartmentalized just moments ago, suddenly felt impossibly, terrifyingly small. The email landed in Liam's inbox on a Monday morning. It was from the New York Children's Literacy Fund. His heart hammered against his ribs as he clicked it open. He'd been checking his email obsessively for days, vacillating between hope and a grim certainty that a big agency had snatched the contract. Dear Mr. Bennett, the board of the NYCLF was exceptionally impressed with your design proposal. Your vision for our new branding identity was both innovative and deeply resonant with our core mission. We would like to invite you to a final presentation meeting this Thursday at 10 a.m. to discuss your concept further with the board's chairwoman. Liam shot up from his chair with a whoop of joy that sent his coffee mug rattling. Yes, yes, he grabbed Lily, who was coloring at the kitchen table, and spun her around. We got a meeting, Lils, a big one. Did you sell a picture, Daddy? She asked, giggling as he put her down. Something like that, sweetheart. Something like that. This was it. the lifeline he'd been praying for. The project wasn't just a paycheck. It was a chance to rebuild his professional reputation, to do meaningful work, to finally get ahead of the bills instead of constantly chasing them. He spent the next 3 days in a frenzy of preparation. He refined his mock-ups, polished his presentation, and rehearsed his pitch until the words were smooth and confident. He even spent $60 he didn't really have on getting his best suit dry cleaned. He wanted to look the part. He was no longer just a freelancer from Queens. He was a designer presenting to a major philanthropic board. The address for the meeting was not the charity's modest office, but a sleek, imposing skyscraper in Midtown, the headquarters of Oratech. Liam felt a slight unease. It was likely just a donated conference room, a common practice for board members, but it was an intimidating venue nonetheless. It was the same building Chloe had pointed to from the museum steps. On Thursday morning, Liam stood in the cavernous, white marble lobby of Oratech Tower, his worn leather portfolio clutched in his hand. He felt like a guppy in a shark tank. Everything, from the silent, futuristic elevators to the minimalist art on the walls, was designed to communicate power and immense wealth. He was led to a conference room on the 40th floor. The view was breathtaking, a panoramic sweep of the city that made his Queens apartment feel like it was in another country. A pleasant woman named Eleanor, the fund's director, greeted him warmly and introduced him to 2 other board members. They were kind and engaging. "Our chairwoman will be joining us shortly," Eleanor said. "She's just finishing a call. She was the one most taken with your work, Mr. Bennett. She said your design had a humanity that the others lacked." Liam felt a surge of pride. This was everything he had worked for. The conference room door opened. "My apologies for the delay," a crisp, familiar voice said. "The markets in Tokyo are unforgiving." Liam turned, a professional smile ready on his face. The smile froze. Standing in the doorway was Amelia Davenport. She was in full CEO armor, a razor-sharp charcoal gray dress, impossibly high heels, and an aura of authority that seemed to suck the air out of the room. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, the curated composure on her face fractured. He saw the same shock he felt mirrored there. She was the chairwoman. Of course she was, the primary benefactor. It all clicked into place with a horrifying, resounding thud. Amelia recovered first, her mask of cool professionalism snapping back into place. "Mr. Bennett," she said, her voice betraying nothing as she walked to the head of the table. "We meet again. Please, begin." The room suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. The friendly board members now looked at him with a new, curious intensity. Did they know? Did she tell them about their previous encounters? Liam's mind raced. He felt like he was on trial. His carefully rehearsed pitch felt hollow and foolish. His confidence evaporated, replaced by a gnawing suspicion. Had she known it was him all along? Was this some kind of pity project? A charitable act from the billionaire who felt sorry for the sad dad on the museum steps? The thought was mortifying. It soured his victory, turning his proudest professional moment into an act of charity. He took a deep breath, forcing the toxic thoughts away. He had earned this meeting. His work had earned it. He wouldn't let her presence or their strange history derail it. He had to prove he was here on merit, not because of a sandwich. "Good morning," he began, his voice a little shakier than he would have liked. "My name is Liam Bennett, and I believe that literacy isn't just about reading words. It's about learning to read the world." He launched into his presentation. He spoke about his concept, a stylized logo of an open book whose pages turned into a soaring bird, symbolizing freedom and imagination. He talked about using warm, accessible colors to make the brand feel inclusive, not institutional. He showed them mock-ups of the logo on library cards, tote bags, and a mobile reading app. As he spoke, he poured all of his passion, his belief in the project, and his professional pride into his words. He avoided looking directly at Amelia, focusing instead on Eleanor and the other board members, who were nodding along, clearly impressed. He was in his element, the world of design and ideas, and for a few minutes, he forgot about the powerful woman at the head of the table. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. "That's wonderful, Mr. Bennett," Eleanor said, beaming. "It's even better than we'd imagined." The other members echoed her praise. Liam felt a cautious wave of relief. He had done it. He had nailed the presentation. Then Amelia spoke. Her voice was cool and analytical. The concept is strong, Mr. Bennett. The bird motif is clever, but I have concerns about scalability. How will this logo translate to monochrome? What about its digital footprint in micro formats, like a favicon? Your proposal lacks a comprehensive digital asset strategy. Her questions were sharp, precise, and entirely professional. They were also designed to poke holes in his work. He felt the mood in the room shift. She wasn't assessing him as a benefactor. She was dissecting his work as a CEO. He answered each question, drawing on his years of experience at the big agency, providing technical solutions and strategic reasoning. It became a tense volley, a professional duel. He realized she wasn't trying to pity him. She was testing him. She was pushing him harder than anyone else, holding him to a higher standard precisely because of their history. She was trying to prove to herself, and perhaps to her board, that he belonged here for one reason and one reason only, because he was the best person for the job. The grilling continued for another 10 minutes. Finally, she leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled. She looked around the table at the other board members. "Well," she said, her tone unreadable. "Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Bennett?" The room was silent. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Bennett," Amelia said, her gaze locking with his. "The board will be in touch." It was a dismissal, clean, cold, and professional. Liam packed his portfolio, his hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline. He had no idea if he had just secured the job of a lifetime or been expertly dissected and dismissed by one of the most powerful women in the city. As he walked out of the room, he couldn't escape the feeling that his life had just become infinitely more complicated. Liam spent the next 48 hours in a state of suspended animation. He replayed the meeting in his head 1,000 times. Amelia's pointed questions, her unreadable expression, the sudden chill in the room. He was convinced he had blown it. The chasm between his world and hers had been laid bare in that sterile conference room. He was a freelance designer from Queens. She was a titan who spoke of Tokyo markets and digital asset strategy as if it were everyday conversation. He tried to distract himself with work, sketching out logos for a local bakery, but his heart wasn't in it. Every ping of his email sent a jolt of anxiety through him. The call came on Saturday afternoon while he and Lily were at the park. The number was unfamiliar. Liam Bennett speaking. "Mr. Bennett, this is Eleanor Vance from the NYCLF. Liam's heart leaped into his throat. "Hello, Eleanor. I'm calling with good news," she said, her voice warm and cheerful. "The board met yesterday, and we were all in unanimous agreement. We would be thrilled to offer you the contract for the rebranding project." Liam sank onto the park bench, a wave of relief so profound it almost made him dizzy. That's incredible news," he managed to say. Thank you so much. Your work truly spoke to us, Liam. It was the clear winner. The contract will be messengered to you on Monday. There is one small condition, however. Our chairwoman, Ms. Davenport, has requested to be the primary point of contact and project supervisor on this. Given Oratech's significant digital footprint and her expertise in brand outreach, she feels it's the most efficient way to manage the rollout. All creative reviews and milestone meetings will be with her directly. The relief curdled slightly in Liam's stomach. Working directly with Amelia Davenport, not as a kind stranger, not as a fellow parent, but as his client, his boss. The power dynamic, already skewed, was about to be formalized in a legally binding contract. "I see," he said slowly. "That's fine. I look forward to working with her." He hung up the phone with a sense of both triumph and deep trepidation. He had the job, the security, the prestige, the creative fulfillment. It was all his. But it came with a very large, very complicated string attached. The first meeting was scheduled for the following week at Oratech Tower. This time, Liam wasn't led to the grand boardroom, but to Amelia's personal office. It was a corner suite with glass walls that offered a 180-degree view of the city. The space was immaculate, decorated in shades of gray, white, and chrome. It was less an office and more a command center. The only personal touches were a single frame photo on her desk, a smiling man with kind eyes, her late husband, and a small, clumsy-looking clay pencil holder, clearly made by a child. Amelia was all business. "Mr. Bennett, Liam, please have a seat. Congratulations on the contract. Your work earned it." It was the first thing she said, a clear statement intended to sweep away any notion of charity. "Thank you, Amelia," he said, taking the seat opposite her massive desk. "I'm excited to get started." For the next hour, they talked about nothing but work. She was brilliant. Her mind moved at a pace that was both dazzling and intimidating. She dissected his creative brief, offered sharp insights on target demographics, and sketched out a multi-phase rollout plan on a tablet that made his head spin. She challenged him, pushed him, and demanded his best. And to his surprise, he found it exhilarating. He hadn't been this professionally stimulated in years. He rose to the occasion, debating font choices, defending his color palette, and brainstorming taglines with her. They were in sync, two professionals working towards a common goal. As the meeting wound down, the professional energy began to subside, leaving a more personal silence in its wake. "I need to be clear about something," Amelia said, her gaze direct. "Our previous encounters, they have no bearing on this project. Here, you are a contractor and I am the client. We need to maintain a professional boundary." "I agree completely," Liam said, though a part of him felt a strange sense of disappointment. "That's what I want too." "Good," she said, giving a curt nod. But then her eyes softened for a moment, landing on the clay pencil holder. "Chloe was so excited when I told her a man with a famous sandwich recipe was going to be making new pictures for the library." Liam couldn't help but smile. "And Lily was excited that the sad girl from the steps has a mom with a really tall building." A small, genuine laugh escaped Amelia's lips. In that moment, the glass walls and the massive desk seemed to disappear. They were just two people, two single parents, navigating a strange, new intersection in their lives. Over the next few weeks, a new routine formed. They had bi-weekly meetings in her office, marathon sessions of creative review and strategic planning. They were productive, professional, and occasionally they were something more. Conversations about branding would drift into conversations about parenting. A discussion about target audiences for a children's app would turn into a debate about screen time. He learned that she worried constantly about Chloe's loneliness. She learned that he struggled with helping Lily with her math homework and that he missed having another adult to talk to at the end of the day. He saw glimpses of the woman behind the CEO, the Amelia who would absent-mindedly trace the frame of her late husband's photo when she was thinking. The Amelia whose eyes lit up when she talked about Chloe's newfound love for astronomy. He was seeing the person, not the persona. One rainy Thursday, their meeting ran late. It was almost 7 p.m. They were both exhausted but had finally cracked a difficult design problem. "We did it," Liam said, leaning back, a sense of satisfaction washing over him. "We did," Amelia agreed, a tired smile on her face. She looked out the window at the rain-streaked city. "I should let you get home to Lily." "You should get home to Chloe," he countered gently. She sighed, a sound filled with a weariness that had nothing to do with work. "She's with her grandmother tonight. I have to attend a charity gala, a command performance." She said the words with a distinct lack of enthusiasm. "Ah," Liam said, "the glamorous life." "It's anything but," she said, her voice quiet. "It's lonely, standing in a room full of people and feeling completely alone." She looked at him, her guard down for the first time. "You must know what that feels like." He did. He knew it intimately. The deafening silence of the apartment after Lily was asleep. The ache of wanting to share a small victory or a frustrating moment with someone who understood. "I do," he said softly. The space between them was charged with a silent, shared understanding of loss and loneliness. The professional boundary they had so carefully constructed was beginning to feel impossibly thin, and for the first time, Liam wondered what it would be like to cross it. The invitation was Amelia's idea, proposed with a casualness that seemed carefully rehearsed. "The girls have been asking," she'd said at the end of a particularly grueling design review, "about getting together, a play date." Liam was surprised. He had assumed their carefully constructed professional boundary extended to their personal lives. "Oh, sure. That would be nice. Lily would love that." "Good," Amelia had replied, already typing on her keyboard. The moment of personal connection sealed off again. My assistant will coordinate with you. Saturday, my place. And so, on a bright Saturday morning, Liam and Lily found themselves standing outside Amelia's penthouse apartment building, a grand pre-war monolith with doormen in crisp uniforms. Lily clutched a drawing she'd made for Chloe, her eyes wide with wonder at the sheer scale of the place. Is this a castle, Daddy? Something like that, kiddo, Liam murmured, feeling a fresh wave of intimidation. Amelia's apartment was as breathtaking and sterile as her office. It was a vast expanse of white walls, polished concrete floors, and minimalist furniture arranged with geometric precision. It felt more like a modern art gallery than a home. But then Chloe came running out, her face alight with a genuine, unreserved joy. Lily, you came! The two girls immediately forgot the adults, grabbing hands and running off towards Chloe's room, their giggles echoing in the cavernous space. Left alone, Liam and Amelia stood in an awkward silence. Can I get you something? Amelia asked, playing the role of hostess. Coffee? Water? Coffee would be great, he said. He followed her into a kitchen that looked like it had been lifted from a magazine, all stainless steel and marble, with appliances that looked more complex than a spaceship's control panel. As she worked the espresso machine with practiced efficiency, Liam noticed the details he'd missed before. The crayon smudges on the bottom of a white cabinet, a mismatched, brightly colored magnet holding up a school notice on the gleaming refrigerator. Tiny cracks in the fortress of perfection. They took their coffees to the living area, which featured a floor-to-ceiling window with a view that seemed to encompass all of Manhattan. It's quite a view, Liam said, stating the obvious. It's just a view, Amelia replied with a shrug. Sometimes I think Chloe would be happier in a small house, with a backyard she could dig in. There was a wistful note in her voice. They talked for nearly an hour, and this time, there was no pretense of professionalism. He told her about Sarah, about their dreams of opening their own small design studio. He described the gut-wrenching fear of her diagnosis and the quiet, crushing emptiness after she was gone. Amelia, in turn, opened up about Richard. She spoke of his brilliant, chaotic energy, how he could fill a room with his laughter and his wild ideas. She confessed her deepest fear, that in her relentless drive to protect his company, his legacy, she was failing their daughter, letting the memory of his warmth fade from their lives. He was the heart of this family, she said, her gaze distant as she looked out the window. I'm just the CEO. That's not what Chloe sees, Liam said gently. She sees her mom. At that moment, the girls came running back into the room, holding up a large sheet of paper they had been drawing on together. It was a picture of two families. On one side, a stick figure man and a girl with brown hair stood next to a small house. On the other, a stick figure woman and a girl with dark hair stood next to a very tall building, and in the middle, connecting the two houses, was a bright, colorful rainbow. It's us, Lily announced proudly. We're friends now, Chloe added, beaming. Amelia stared at the drawing, and Liam saw her eyes well up. She quickly blinked the tears away, but he had seen them. He saw the profound loneliness and the deep yearning for connection that she kept so carefully hidden beneath her layers of power and success. He felt a powerful, protective urge to reach out, to comfort her, but he held back. The invisible line between them was still there. The playdate ended a few hours later. As Liam and Lily were leaving, Amelia stopped him at the door. Thank you, Liam, she said, her voice soft. For this, for everything. Anytime, Amelia, he replied. Walking home, Liam felt a fundamental shift inside him. The intimidation he'd felt was gone, replaced by a deep and surprising empathy. He wasn't just her contractor anymore, and she wasn't just the billionaire CEO. They were Liam and Amelia, two lonely single parents doing their best, whose kids had drawn a rainbow between their two very different worlds. A few days later, he found the perfect way to encapsulate that feeling. He was working on the final piece of the branding package, a series of promotional photos. The charity needed a signature image for their launch campaign. Liam had an idea. He hired a photographer, and instead of using professional child models, he asked Amelia if Chloe and Lily would be willing to participate. He set up the shoot on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum. He recreated the scene from that first day, but with a crucial difference. He had the two girls sit together on the steps, sharing a book this time, not a sandwich. They were leaning against each other, completely absorbed in the story, their heads bent together, one with dark hair, one with brown. It was a perfect image of friendship and the magic of literacy. Amelia stood with him behind the photographer watching. "It's perfect," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It's real. That's what this is all about, right?" he said. "Finding real connections." The photographer captured the shot, the iconic museum looming behind two small girls, united by a story. But Liam's gaze was on Amelia. The afternoon sun caught her hair, and in that unguarded moment, as she watched their daughters, she looked beautiful and vulnerable and, for the first time, truly happy. He lifted his own phone and, just as she had done weeks ago, he took a picture. Not of the girls, but of her. A slightly blurry photo of a CEO who had forgotten her empire, a mother captivated by a moment of simple, profound joy. He knew with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified him, that his feelings for her were no longer just professional or empathetic. It was something more, and he had no idea what to do about it. The New York Children's Literacy Fund Gala was a universe unto itself, a glittering cosmos of chandeliers and old money held in the grand ballroom of the plaza. In his stiff, rented tuxedo, Liam felt like an astronaut who had stumbled onto the wrong planet. His feeling of otherness only intensified when Amelia appeared, a vision in a sapphire gown. She was royalty in her element, and he was the stranger on her arm. For a moment, when the campaign video played and the photo of their daughter sharing a book filled the screen, a wave of shared pride connected them across the divide. But the moment was fleeting. The inevitable confrontation came in the form of Harrison Croft, a condescending Oratech board member. "Amelia, darling," he sneered, his eyes dismissing Liam entirely. "I must say, your new project is the talk of the town, a very charitable endeavor." The word project was aimed at Liam like a dart. Amelia's response was immediate and icy. "Liam's work has more integrity than your entire portfolio, Harrison. He earned his place here." But Croft's poison had already seeped in. Liam saw it all with painful clarity. In this world, he would always be her charity case. The applause and accolades felt like a sham. Later, unable to bear the weight of the pretense any longer, he found Amelia by the terrace. "I should go," he said, his voice tight. "Thank you for the invitation." "Liam, don't let him get to you," she pleaded softly. "He was just saying what everyone's thinking," Liam shot back, the hurt finally spilling out. "Look at this place, Amelia. Look at us. We're from different worlds. A shared sandwich doesn't change that." "Is that what you think this is?" she asked, her voice trembling with a passion that silenced him. "My world was a fortress of glass and steel until you came along. It was safe and successful and profoundly empty. You and Lily, you broke down the walls. You brought color and heart and chaos back into my life, and I never knew how desperately I missed it." She stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. "I don't care about their world, Liam. I care about the one we're starting to build. The one with famous turkey sandwiches and play dates and two little girls who drew a rainbow between our homes. I'm falling in love with you, Liam Bennett. Not your portfolio, not your potential. You." Her confession shattered his defenses. All the insecurity and fear melted away in the face of her raw, beautiful honesty. He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek, the glittering ballroom forgotten behind them. "I'm falling in love with you too, Amelia," he whispered. He leaned in and kissed her, a quiet, defiant act that sealed their choice. Their worlds weren't colliding anymore. They were finally, irrevocably, merging into one. And so a story that began with a single act of kindness on a cold set of steps found its way to a new beginning. It wasn't a fairy tale ending where all differences magically disappeared. Liam's apartment didn't suddenly get bigger, and Amelia's world didn't get any less complicated. But they were no longer facing their worlds alone. They built a bridge, not of wealth or status, but of understanding, respect, and a deep, abiding love. They learned to navigate the galas and the parent-teacher conferences, the board meetings and the trips to the bookstore, together. Their two separate worlds, slowly, beautifully, became one shared life, creating a family bound not by blood, but by choice in a famous turkey sandwich. They proved that the greatest fortune in life isn't what you have, but who you have to share it with. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that kindness is the most valuable currency we have, please take a moment to hit that like button. Share this story with someone who might need a little reminder of the good in the world. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tales that celebrate the extraordinary connections found in ordinary lives. Thank you for listening.